The golden sunrise spilled across the horizon, casting long shadows over the Mackenzie family farm. Lily Mackenzie, 10 years old with wild auburn hair and curious green eyes, was already awake, as she was every morning before dawn. 4 generations of Mackenzies had worked this land, and even at her young age, Lily understood the responsibility that rested on her small shoulders. She slipped her feet into mud-caked boots by the back door, careful not to wake her parents, Robert and Elizabeth, who would be up soon enough. The cool morning air greeted her as she stepped outside, the familiar sense of hay, earth, and animal filling her lungs. Her faithful golden retriever, Comet, bounded to her side, tail wagging in anticipation of their morning routine. "Come on, boy," Lily whispered, scratching behind his ears. "The animals are waiting." Together they crossed the dew-soaked grass toward the red barn that stood tall against the brightening sky. The Mackenzie farm wasn't the largest in the county, but it was diverse. Horses, goats, chickens, a small apple orchard, and fields of corn and soybeans stretching toward the horizon. Each animal seemed to recognize Lily's special touch. The horses nickered softly as she approached. The goats pushed their heads against her small hands for attention, and even the temperamental rooster refrained from his usual aggressive displays when she collected eggs. "Morning, Willow," Lily murmured to her favorite mare, offering an apple from her pocket. The horse's velvet lips tickled her palm as she accepted the treat. "Sleep well?" As she worked through her chores, measuring feed, refreshing water, checking for signs of illness or distress, Lily's mind wandered to the book hidden beneath her mattress. Cosmic Encounters, Evidence of Alien Life Among Us wasn't exactly forbidden in the Mackenzie household, but her father would certainly raise an eyebrow at her fascination with such nonsense. Robert Mackenzie was practical to his core, believing only in what he could see, touch, and understand. Her mother was more open-minded, but still worried about Lily's vivid imagination taking her too far from reality. But Lily couldn't help herself. While she loved the farm and the animals, something inside her yearned for more, for adventure, for the unknown, for something beyond the predictable rhythm of rural life, the vastness of space, the possibility of other worlds and beings, filled her with wonder that the familiar fields and barns could not satisfy. By the time she finished her morning chores, the sun had fully risen, bathing the farm in warm light. Lily leaned against the barn door, Comet panting contentedly at her feet, and watched as her parents emerged from the farmhouse, ready to begin their day. "Up with the chickens again, I see," her father called, his weather-worn face creasing into a smile. Tall and broad-shouldered, Robert Mackenzie moved with the deliberate confidence of someone who had worked the land his entire life. "Someone has to make sure they're behaving," Lily replied with a grin. Her mother joined them, bringing the scent of fresh coffee and cinnamon. Elizabeth Mackenzie was softer than her husband in appearance, but equally strong in spirit. Her hands, though marked by years of farm work, moved with grace as she handed Lily a warm muffin. "You're a blessing, little one," she said, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's freckled face. "But you don't have to carry the whole farm on your shoulders every morning." "I don't mind," Lily insisted, breaking off a piece of muffin for Comet. "The animals like me better anyway." Her father laughed. "Can't argue with that. You've got the old touch, just like your grandmother." The old touch was what the family called Lily's special way with animals. Her grandmother had possessed it too, an intuitive understanding that went beyond training or experience. Animals that were skittish with others would calm under Lily's hand. Ailments that puzzled the local veterinarian would improve with her care. It wasn't something that could be explained, just observed and appreciated. As her parents discussed the day's work, repairs to the north fence, a delivery of feed expected by noon, concerns about the weather forecast, Lily finished her breakfast and contemplated how to spend the hours before she'd be needed again. Summer vacation meant freedom from school, but not from responsibility. "I'm going to read in the orchard for a while," she announced, already backing away. "Don't go too far," her mother cautioned, "and be back by lunch to help with the deliveries." "I will." With Comet bounding ahead, Lily raced toward the apple orchard at the eastern edge of the property. The trees weren't bearing fruit yet, but they provided perfect shade for reading. From beneath her shirt, she pulled out a dog-eared copy of Stellar Civilizations: What We Might Learn from Our Galactic Neighbors, borrowed from the school library before summer break. Settling against the rough bark of her favorite tree, Lily lost herself in theories of alien architecture and interstellar travel. Comet dozed beside her, occasionally twitching in dreams of rabbit chases. Hours passed this way, Lily's imagination soaring far beyond the boundaries of the farm, the county, the planet. Only the distant call of her mother roused her from these cosmic journeys. Reluctantly closing her book and tucking it into a hollow space in the tree, her secret library, Lily headed back to the farmhouse, unaware that the boundary between her fantasies and reality was about to dissolve completely. That night, Lily tossed and turned in her bed, unusual restlessness preventing sleep. The window was open, summer air carrying the symphony of crickets and distant frogs. But something felt different about the darkness. Something felt watchful. Just before midnight, she sat bolt upright, certain she'd heard a sound unlike any she knew. Not an animal call, not the creak of the old farmhouse settling, but something high-pitched and rhythmic, almost like chittering but with an uncanny musicality that raised goosebumps on her arms. Beside her bed, Comet whined softly, ears perked toward the window. "You heard it too?" she whispered, heart racing. The sound came again, closer this time, and with it, a faint blue glow flickered outside her window, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lily hesitated only briefly before sliding out of bed. If she woke her parents for what might turn out to be nothing, her father would give her that look, the one that said her imagination was running wild again. No, she would investigate herself first. Pulling on her boots and a light jacket over her pajamas, Lily crept down the stairs, Comet close at her heels. The old floorboards betrayed her with creaks, but her parents' soft snores continued undisturbed from behind their bedroom door. Outside, the farm was transformed by moonlight into a landscape of silver and shadow. The chittering had stopped, but the blue glow remained, emanating from— Lily's heart skipped— the barn. "Stay close," she murmured to Comet, who seemed torn between protective loyalty and the instinct to retreat from whatever waited ahead. The barn door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of ethereal blue light spilling onto the ground. Lily approached cautiously, every sense alert. The air felt charged, like the moments before a lightning strike, and carried a faint metallic tang she'd never noticed before. With trembling fingers, she pulled the door wider and peered inside. What she saw stopped her breath. In the center of the barn floor, arranged in a perfect square formation, sat 4 creatures unlike anything Lily had ever seen or read about in her secret books. They were the size of small cats, with iridescent scales that shifted from midnight blue to emerald green as they moved. Their wings, delicate, translucent membranes, were folded tightly against their sinuous bodies. But most striking were their eyes, large, luminous, and unmistakably intelligent, regarding Lily with what could only be described as expectation. Baby dragons. The words formed in her mind unbidden, but dragons weren't real. Were they? Comet gave a low whimper but didn't bark or growl. The creatures, the dragons, responded with soft trilling sounds that somehow conveyed reassurance. Lily took a tentative step forward, then another. The dragons remained perfectly still, watching. There was no aggression in their posture, no fear, only that unsettling awareness, as if they had been waiting specifically for her. "Hello," she whispered, feeling both foolish and awestruck. "Where did you come from?" As if in answer, the blue glow intensified, emanating from behind a stack of hay bales. Lily edged closer to investigate, keeping the dragons in her peripheral vision. Moving aside some hay, she gasped. A perfect circle had been scorched into the wooden floor, and at its center lay a metallic disc about the size of a dinner plate. Its surface was covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as she watched, glowing with the same blue light. This was no prank, no escaped exotic pets. This was something other. Overwhelmed, Lily backed away and ran for the farmhouse. Comet racing ahead. This time, she didn't hesitate to wake her parents. "Mom! Dad!" she called, bursting into their bedroom. "You have to come see. There's something in the barn." Robert Mackenzie sat up groggily, reaching for his glasses. "What's all this about, Lily?" "It's the middle of the night." "Dragons!" Lily blurted, already pulling at her father's arm. "Baby dragons in the barn, and a circle burned into the floor, and a metal thing with moving symbols, and—" "Lily," her mother interrupted gently, fully awake now and concerned. "You've been reading those books again, haven't you? Dreams can seem very real sometimes." "It's not a dream," Lily insisted, fighting back tears of frustration. "Comet saw them too. Please, just come look." Her parents exchanged that look, the one that said their daughter's imagination had taken her too far this time. But they rose and pulled on robes and boots. If nothing else, they needed to reassure Lily before anyone could return to sleep. "Lead the way then," her father said, picking up a flashlight from the bedside table. "Let's see these dragons of yours." The walk to the barn felt both too long and too short to Lily. What if the dragons had disappeared? What if her parents' presence frightened them away? Or worse, what if they had never been there at all, and she really had imagined the whole thing? But as they approached, the blue glow was still visible through the barn windows, and her father slowed his pace, suddenly less certain. "What in the world?" he muttered, raising the flashlight. "I told you," Lily whispered, a mixture of vindication and trepidation washing over her. Together, the three Mackenzies and Comet entered the barn. The flashlight beam swept across the interior until it found the four creatures, still in their perfect formation, still watching with those two intelligent eyes. Elizabeth gasped and clutched her husband's arm. Robert stood frozen, flashlight beam trembling slightly. Those aren't," he stammered. "Dragons," Lily supplied. "I think they're baby dragons." No one corrected her this time. The dragons trilled softly, the sound somehow conveying patience and invitation. After a long moment, Robert took a cautious step forward, professional curiosity beginning to override shock. "They're not like any animals I've ever seen," he murmured. "The scale pattern, the wing structure. This isn't anything terrestrial." "Look behind the hay," Lily urged. "There's more." With extreme caution, Robert approached the hay bales, keeping a wary eye on the dragons. They made no move to stop him as he discovered the scorched circle and the metallic disc. "Elizabeth," he said quietly, "go call Dr. Reeves." Dr. Alan Reeves had been the Mackenzie Farm's veterinarian for 20 years, but his expertise extended far beyond domestic animals. With a background in comparative anatomy and a side interest in what he diplomatically called xenobiology, he was the closest thing to an expert on unknown creatures they could access without alerting authorities. While they waited for him to arrive, Robert conducted a careful inspection of the barn, looking for any sign of how the dragons and the disc had appeared. The barn doors and windows had been securely closed the night before. Lily had checked them herself during evening chores. There was no other entry point large enough for even these small creatures to have squeezed through. "It's as if they materialized inside," he concluded, running a hand through his thinning hair. Or someone put them here," Elizabeth finished, voicing what they were all thinking. She kept her distance from the dragons, instinctual caution overriding curiosity. Lily, however, had settled on the floor a few feet away from the creatures, observing them with fascination. "They're not afraid," she noted. "And they don't try to leave, even though we've left the door open." This was true. Despite having clear paths to escape, the dragons remained in their formation, occasionally shifting position but never breaking their square arrangement. By the time Dr. Reeves arrived, dawn was breaking again. The veterinarian entered the barn with the cautious reverence of someone approaching a holy site. "Extraordinary," he breathed, setting down his equipment case, tall and lean, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Reeves had the air of a professor rather than a country vet. "Simply extraordinary." "What are they, Doctor?" Robert asked, keeping his voice low as if in a library. Some kind of undiscovered reptile species? Dr. Reeves knelt near the dragons, who regarded him with the same calm assessment they'd shown the Mackenzies. These are no Earth reptiles, Robert, the bioluminescent properties alone. He gestured to the subtle glow emanating from beneath their scales. And look at the wing structure, not membrane stretched over bone like bats or pterosaurs, but something almost crystalline. Are you saying they're not from here? Elizabeth asked, her voice barely audible. The veterinarian chose his words carefully. I'm saying they don't match any known terrestrial biology. Beyond that, I'd need to run tests. Can you do that without hurting them? Lily asked quickly, protective instinct flaring. Dr. Reeves smiled gently at her. Non-invasive only, I promise. Scans, surface samples, behavioral observations. With your parents' permission, of course. Robert nodded slowly. We need to understand what we're dealing with. What about that? Elizabeth pointed to the metallic disc, which continued to pulse with blue light, its symbols rearranging themselves periodically. That, Dr. Reeves said, is even more fascinating. Some kind of technology, obviously, but nothing I've ever encountered. The symbols appear to be changing in response to environmental factors, temperature, movement, perhaps even our presence. It's a calling card, Lily said suddenly, the pieces clicking together in her mind. Or instructions. The adults turned to look at her. What makes you say that, sweetheart? Her mother asked. Lily struggled to articulate the certainty she felt. The dragons aren't trying to escape, they're waiting. And that thing, she pointed to the disc, is telling whoever left them here how to find them again. A heavy silence followed her words as the implications sank in. If Lily's right, Dr. Reeves said finally, then we need to consider the possibility that someone or something will be coming back for them. The next few days unfolded in a blur of discrete activity. The Mackenzies and Dr. Reeves agreed to keep the dragon's existence secret for as long as possible. If word got out, their farm would be overrun with curiosity seekers at best, government agents at worst. Dr. Reeves converted part of his clinic into a secure research space, bringing equipment after hours to avoid questions. The dragons, which Lily had begun naming despite her parents' cautions against getting attached, were transported to the clinic in a specially modified crate, the metallic disc carefully wrapped and brought along. The names came naturally to Lily. Cosmos for the largest, whose scales shimmered with deep blues and purples like a night sky, Nova for the smallest, with flashes of bright white among emerald green, Orbit for the one with curious, ever-moving eyes and scales that shifted through blues and silvers, and Comet for the fourth, named after her dog for their similar temperaments, watchful but gentle. Dr. Reeves's tests confirmed what they already suspected. The dragons were like nothing on Earth. Their cellular structure, while carbon-based, contained elements and arrangements never before documented in terrestrial biology. More surprisingly, each dragon had a tiny implant at the base of its skull, visible only under imaging equipment. Identification chips, Dr. Reeves explained, showing them the scans. Similar to what we use for pets, but quantum levels more sophisticated. They're not just passive transponders, they're actively recording and possibly transmitting data. Transmitting to whom? Robert asked, the implications making him increasingly uneasy. That's the question, isn't it? The veterinarian adjusted his glasses. I've taken the liberty of contacting a former colleague, Margaret Harrove. She's retired NASA, lives just outside town. Amateur astronomer now. But she might have insights about the disk. Mrs. Harrove arrived at the clinic that evening, a sprightly woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and no patience for beating around the bush. Aliens, she declared after examining the dragons and the disk for less than 5 minutes. Not a doubt in my mind. The question isn't what they are, but why they're here. While the adults debated theories ranging from scientific exploration to invasion vanguard, Lily sat with the dragons in their specially constructed habitat. Unlike typical reptiles, they seemed to crave interaction. responding to her voice with melodic trills and pressing close when she placed her hands against the habitat walls. "You're not scary at all," she murmured to them. "Whatever you are, wherever you're from, you're just babies, aren't you? Lost or left behind?" The dragons trilled in what sounded remarkably like agreement. Mrs. Harov joined her, watching the interaction with keen interest. "They respond to you differently than to the rest of us," she observed. "Almost as if—" "As if what?" Lily prompted when the older woman trailed off. "As if you're part of their programming," Mrs. Harov said thoughtfully, "or their mission." Before Lily could ask what she meant, the disc, which had been placed on a workbench nearby, began to pulse more rapidly, its symbols shifting faster than they'd ever seen before. "Something's happening," Dr. Reeves called, drawing everyone's attention to the disc. The symbols stabilized suddenly into a fixed pattern, and a holographic projection appeared above it, a three-dimensional star map that rotated slowly in the air. "Good Lord," Mrs. Harov whispered, approaching with reverent steps. "That's our local star cluster, but from a perspective I've never seen in any NASA imaging." She pointed to a small bluish star near the edge of the projection. "This one. I don't recognize it from this angle, but based on its position relative to our sun—" She fell silent, calculations running behind her eyes. "What is it, Mrs. Harov?" Lily asked, fascinated by the glowing map. "If I'm right," the former NASA scientist said slowly, "that's their home. And it's not in any of our catalogs because it's hidden from Earth's view by a nebula cloud. We've never had the right angle to see it." As if confirming her theory, the projection zoomed in on the blue star, revealing a planetary system. Further zooming showed a world of deep blues and greens, with swirling white clouds and 3 small moons. The dragons became extremely animated at this sight, their trilling reaching a crescendo as they pressed against the habitat walls, wings fluttering. "That's it," Lily breathed. "That's their home." But the projection wasn't finished. It shifted again, showing the blue-green planet's surface transforming, lush landscapes withering, oceans receding, atmosphere clouding with particulates. "Environmental collapse," Dr. Reeves murmured. "They're showing us their world dying." The final image was of creatures like their dragons, but fully grown. Magnificent beings with wingspans that must have stretched 20 feet or more. Iridescent scales gleaming in alien sunlight. The adult dragons were shown gathering smaller ones, babies, and then a fleet of organic-looking spacecraft launching toward the stars. "A rescue mission," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. "They're evacuating the young." "But why here?" Elizabeth wondered. "Why our farm?" The projection shifted one last time, showing a split image. On one side, the dying alien world, on the other, Earth, specifically the American Midwest. Between them appeared simplified images of the dragons and humans working together, surrounded by rejuvenated landscapes. "They need help," Lily said with sudden clarity. "They need us to save their world. And maybe we need them to save ours." The projection faded, leaving the assembled humans in stunned silence, the implications of what they'd witnessed sinking in. "This changes everything," Dr. Reeves said finally. "This isn't just about 4 alien creatures in a barn anymore. This is first contact." That night, as the adults discussed their next steps, whether to notify authorities, which experts to consult, how to protect the dragons from exploitation, Lily sat alone on the clinic's back steps, looking up at the stars with new eyes. A soft voice broke into her thoughts. "Heavy burden for young shoulders." Lily turned to find Mrs. Harov settling beside her, joints creaking slightly. "I keep thinking about their world," Lily admitted. "All those dragons, watching their home die, sending their babies away to strangers." Mrs. Harov nodded. "Acts of desperation and hope. The oldest story in any world, I'd wager. Do you think we can help them? Really help them?" The older woman was quiet for a long moment. "I think that's what they're counting on. And I think they chose your farm, chose you, very deliberately." "But why me? I'm just a kid." Perhaps that's exactly why. Mrs. Harov's eyes twinkled in the starlight. Children see possibilities where adults see problems. Children adapt when adults resist. And children, my dear Lily, still believe in dragons. They sat in companionable silence, contemplating the vastness above them and the impossible visitors it had delivered. Whatever comes next, Mrs. Harov said finally, remember that you were chosen as their first contact. That means something. The weight of that responsibility settled on Lily's shoulders, heavy but not crushing. For the first time in her young life, the adventure she'd craved had found her, and it was greater and more important than anything she could have imagined. That night, the decision was made to move the dragons back to the Mackenzie farm. The clinic was too public, too easily observed. The barn, with its remote location and the family's ability to monitor it constantly, offered better protection while they determined their next steps. As they prepared for transport, Dr. Reeves made a startling discovery. The implants in the dragon's skulls, he announced, reviewing his latest scans. They're changing, growing more complex. It's as if they're activating. What does that mean? Robert asked, helping secure the transport container. I'm not certain, the veterinarian admitted. But if I had to guess, I'd say they're preparing for something. The return to the farm was accomplished under cover of darkness. The dragons seemed content to be back in the barn, immediately arranging themselves in their square formation over the scorched circle, which had begun to emit a faint glow of its own. Days passed in tense anticipation. Mrs. Harov set up astronomical monitoring equipment in the hayloft, scanning the skies for any sign of approaching craft. Dr. Reeves continued his non-invasive studies of the dragons, whose biology seemed to be adapting to Earth's atmosphere and gravity with remarkable speed. Lily spent every moment she could with them. The dragons had begun responding to their names, and would break their formation to cluster around her whenever she entered the barn. They'd grown noticeably in just a week, now the size of medium dogs, their wings stronger and more defined. The most startling development came when Cosmos, the largest, initiated what could only be described as a game, picking up small objects with his flexible, three-fingered forelimbs and hiding them for Lily to find. The level of intelligence this demonstrated went far beyond what even the most optimistic among them had theorized. They're not just animals, Dr. Reeves said after witnessing this behavior. The neural complexity I'm detecting in my scans, it's comparable to highly intelligent primates, possibly even beyond. They understand everything we say, Lily insisted. They're just learning how to communicate back. As if to prove her point, the dragons had begun mimicking simple sounds, not words exactly, but distinct vocalizations they used consistently for specific objects or people. A sharp, rising trill for Lily, a lower, rumbling sound for Robert, a melodic series of notes for Elizabeth. The disc, meanwhile, had continued its transformation. The symbols now remained fixed in a single pattern, and the blue glow had intensified to the point where it illuminated the entire barn at night. It's a beacon, Mrs. Harov determined. And if I'm right about interstellar communication methods, it's getting stronger because someone is getting closer. The waiting came to an abrupt end exactly 2 weeks after Lily had first discovered the dragons. It began with the animals, all of them, across the farm, falling utterly silent just after sunset. The horses stood rigid in their paddock, ears pricked toward the sky. The chickens huddled motionless in their coop. Even Comet sat alert but quiet on the farmhouse porch, eyes fixed upward. Something's coming, Lily whispered, feeling it in the electric tension of the air. The family gathered outside, joined by Dr. Reeves and Mrs. Harov, who had taken to staying in the Mackenzie's guest room. Together they watched as a patch of night sky seemed to ripple and distort, stars blinking out temporarily as something massive moved across their light. There! Mrs. Harov breathed, pointing to a shadow darker than the surrounding darkness, descending with impossible grace and silence. The craft, for it could be nothing else, was unlike any human conception of a spaceship. Organic in appearance, it resembled a massive manta ray, its surface shifting with the same iridescence as the dragon's scales. No lights, no obvious propulsion system, no mechanical components visible, just flowing, living architecture that defied terrestrial engineering. It came to rest in the open field beyond the barn, settling onto the ground with barely a whisper of displaced air. Its size became apparent then, at least 50 feet across, dwarfing the humans who stood frozen in awe and trepidation. The dragons burst from the barn doors, which Lily had left open in anticipation. They raced toward the craft with joyful trills, wings extended but not yet capable of true flight. Instead of going directly to the ship, however, they formed a protective circle around Lily, facing outward as if guarding her. "What are they doing?" Elizabeth whispered, clutching her husband's arm. "Presenting her," Mrs. Harrow said with sudden understanding. "They're presenting Lily as their chosen human ambassador." Before anyone could respond to this revelation, a section of the craft's sleek surface rippled and parted, creating an opening from which spilled the now familiar blue light. A ramp of the same organic material extended to touch the ground. A figure emerged, tall and slender, moving with fluid grace. As it approached, features became clearer, humanoid in basic shape, but with the same iridescent scaling as the dragon's covering exposed skin. Its face was elongated, with large, luminous eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them. No visible mouth, just subtle ridges where one might expect it. No hair, but elegant bone structures extending from the skull like a natural crown. The being stopped several yards away from the humans, and from its chest emerged a small device similar to the disc found with the dragons. It raised a 7-fingered hand in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. When it spoke, the words came not as sound, but as images and concepts projected directly into their minds. "We greet you with gratitude and hope. We are the Lumiar. We come in peace and necessity." The mental voice was neither male nor female, neither young nor old, but carried a weight of wisdom and age that made Mrs. Harrow gasp audibly. "The young ones have chosen well, the child with the open mind and caring heart." Lily felt the dragons press closer against her legs, their trills soft and encouraging. They chose me?" she managed to ask aloud. "Yes, child. We seeded many possible first contacts across your world. The young ones were genetically encoded to bond with specific human types, those with empathy, curiosity, and courage balanced in optimal proportions. You were among the candidates, but it was their choice to awaken to your presence." "There are more of them, more dragons on Earth?" Dr. Reeves asked, professional curiosity temporarily overriding his astonishment. "Many, waiting in dormancy for the right humans to discover them. Some already have." Robert found his voice next, protective instinct surging. "Why? What do you want with us, with our daughter?" The alien ambassador's mental voice softened. "To save both our worlds." With a gesture of its hand, the being activated a holographic display far more sophisticated than what the disc had produced. 3-dimensional images bloomed in the night air, showing the Lumiar homeworld in its former glory. A stunning ecosystem of floating mountains, crystal forests, and massive adult dragons soaring through prismatic skies. "This was our world for 100,000 of your years, in harmony, in balance." The images shifted, showing industrial development, cities rising, technology advancing, all with the dragons integrated into the society, working alongside the humanoid Lumiar. Progress brought wonders, but at a cost we did not foresee. The next sequence showed environmental degradation, those same crystal forests withering, oceans discolored, atmosphere thickening with pollution. Adult dragons were shown falling ill, their numbers dwindling. Our technology disrupted ancient balances. Our dragons, keystone species in our ecosystem, began to die. Without them, the collapse accelerated beyond our ability to reverse it. The final images were of desperate evacuation efforts, dragon eggs and infants being loaded into organic ships, launching toward distant stars. "We had studied your world for generations. Earth's biosphere is compatible with our dragon's biology. But more importantly, Your species stands at a crossroads we once faced. You have not yet passed the point of no return. You want to save your dragons by bringing them here? Elizabeth asked, beginning to understand. And in doing so, perhaps save humanity from our fate. The being gestured to the baby dragons surrounding Lily. These young ones are more than companions or refugees. They are biologically engineered to help restore damaged ecosystems. Their waste products neutralize pollutants. Their presence stimulates plant growth. Their wings, when fully developed, will seed clouds and help regulate rainfall patterns. Dr. Reeves stepped forward, excitement overcoming caution. You're offering us a symbiotic relationship. Your dragons get a new home, and we get ecological engineering beyond our capabilities. Yes, but such a partnership requires trust, understanding, cooperation between our peoples. The ambassador's gaze returned to Lily, who stood transfixed by the cosmic significance of what was unfolding around her. The young human has already begun this work. She has shown care without ownership, curiosity without exploitation, love without condition. These are the foundations upon which lasting cooperation must be built. Lily felt the weight of those alien eyes, ancient, knowing, hopeful, resting on her. The dragons at her feet trilled encouragingly, Cosmos nudging her hand with his scaled head. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small but steady. "Now, young one, you help us share this opportunity with your world. Not all will welcome it. Not all will understand. But enough must, if both our peoples are to thrive." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. The arrival of the Lumiar could not be kept secret for long, nor did the aliens wish it to be. They had come prepared for first contact protocols, carrying vast databases of Earth languages, cultures, and political structures. Government officials descended on the Mackenzie farm within days. First local authorities, then state, then federal agents and military personnel. The perimeter of the property became a secure zone, with checkpoints and surveillance that transformed the once peaceful farm into something resembling a military installation. Through it all, Lily remained central to the unfolding relationship. The dragons refused to cooperate with anyone else, responding only to her directions and preferences. This gave the Mackenzie family an unexpected leverage in negotiations that might otherwise have excluded them entirely. The Lumiar ambassador, who had given the approximation of its name as Thalassa, insisted on Lily's presence at all major discussions. Initially, officials balked at including a 10-year-old in sensitive diplomatic talks, but the aliens were unmovable on this point. The dragons have formed a biological and neurological bond with the child, Thalassa explained through its now refined translation technology. Their assessment of human intentions is partly filtered through her perceptions. Without her, we cannot be certain of true understanding between our species. Reluctantly, the authorities conceded, though Lily's parents insisted on being present for all meetings, protective of their daughter despite the extraordinary circumstances. The first major test of the new relationship came when a contingent of military scientists requested permission to study the dragon's biology through invasive procedures. Lily's vehement objection, backed by her parents and Dr. Reeves, created a standoff that threatened to derail the fragile diplomatic process. Thalassa resolved the situation with characteristic wisdom. "We understand your desire for security and knowledge," the ambassador told the assembled officials, "but trust must be earned on both sides. We propose instead a demonstration." The demonstration took place on a section of the Mackenzie farm that had been unproductive for years, soil depleted by generations of conventional agriculture, resistant to all efforts at rejuvenation. Under Lily's guidance, the 4 dragons performed a ritual that defied scientific explanation. They arranged themselves at the corners of the field and, in perfect synchronization, released a fine mist from specialized glands beneath their wings. Where the mist settled, the soil visibly changed color, darkening with renewed nutrients. More remarkably, when one of the more skeptical military observers slipped and fell into a puddle of standing water that had been contaminated with motor oil from farm equipment, Cosmos approached and deliberately dropped saliva into the water. Within minutes, the oil had broken down into harmless components. Enzymatic acceleration of hydrocarbon degradation, Dr. Reeves explained, examining samples with field equipment. They're living bioremediation systems. These demonstrations began to shift official attitudes from suspicion to cautious optimism. When satellite imagery confirmed that similar dragons had been discovered in strategic locations around the globe, always by children with Lily's similar traits of empathy and openness, the perspective shifted further. This was not an invasion targeting America, but a planetary offer of partnership. News of the alien arrival spread worldwide, creating reactions ranging from religious panic to ecological celebration. The Mackenzie farm became the focal point of global attention, with media outlets broadcasting images of Lily and her dragons to an audience of billions. Through it all, Lily herself remained remarkably grounded. The dragons continued to grow, now the size of ponies, their intelligence and capabilities expanding daily. They had begun gliding short distances, their wings strengthening in preparation for true flight. "You're going to be beautiful," Lily told Cosmos one evening, stroking his scaled head as they sat together in the barn that had become a diplomatic hub. "All of you, just like in the holograms of your parents." Cosmos trilled softly, pressing his forehead against hers in a gesture that had become their special greeting. Through this contact, Lily sometimes caught glimpses of his thoughts, not words, but impressions, emotions, memories that might have been genetic or transmitted from his distant parents. "I know you miss them," she whispered, "but we'll take care of you. I promise." The turning point in global acceptance came 3 months after the initial contact, when a delegation of international officials visited the farm. Among them was a particularly skeptical security advisor who made no secret of his distrust of the alien presence. During the tour, a structural failure in one of the temporary buildings caused a steel support to collapse. The security advisor was directly in its path, with no time for human intervention. Nova, the smallest and quickest of the dragons, moved with impossible speed, her growing wings extending to shield the man as the metal beam crashed down. The scales on her back, already beginning to harden into the armor of adulthood, deflected the impact that would have killed the human instantly. The security advisor emerged shaken but completely unharmed. Nova suffered only minor injuries, which healed within days thanks to the dragon's remarkable regenerative abilities. The incident, captured on multiple cameras and broadcast globally, did more for interspecies relations than months of diplomatic talks. Here was visible, undeniable proof of the dragon's protective instincts toward humans, even those who had shown them suspicion. 6 months after first contact, Lily found herself in an unimaginable position, addressing the United Nations General Assembly, with Cosmos by her side, now standing shoulder height to her. With a wingspan that barely fit through standard doorways, the dragon created an imposing but majestic presence beside the still small human girl. The hall fell silent as Lily approached the microphone, adjusted for her height. At 10.5 years old, dressed in her patched overalls with her auburn hair neatly braided, she embodied the unexpected face of interstellar diplomacy. "My name is Lily Mackenzie," she began, her voice clear despite her nerves. "6 months ago, I found 4 baby dragons in my family's barn. Today, I speak for them, and for the thousands of dragons now awakening around our world, bonding with children who see with open hearts." Cosmos trilled softly in encouragement, the sound amplified through the hall's speakers. "The Lumiar have offered us a second chance, for their children and for our planet. Their dragons can help heal the damage we've done to Earth, but only if we work together with them. Only if we change how we think about our home." She gestured to the diplomats and leaders before her. "You're worried about security, about sovereignty, about control. I understand that. But the dragons aren't here to take anything from us. They're refugees, hoping to give something back in exchange for sanctuary." Lily took a breath, drawing strength from Cosmos's steady presence. "I'm just a farm kid who got lucky enough to be chosen by these amazing beings. But even I can see that we're being offered something precious, a partnership that could save both our worlds. All we have to do is be brave enough to accept it." As she spoke these final words, Cosmos unfurled his wings to their full extension, the iridescent membranes catching the light in a display that drew gasps from the assembled diplomats. It was both a gesture of trust, exposing his most vulnerable anatomy, and a demonstration of the beauty his kind brought to Earth. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The assembly rose in a standing ovation that continued for several minutes, led by the security advisor whose life Nova had saved. In the year that followed, the integration of dragons into Earth's ecosystems progressed with remarkable speed. The Lumiar, true to their word, shared only environmental technology, withholding anything that might be weaponized. Their focus remained solely on restoring balance to their adopted world. Dragon Guardians, as the children bonded to the aliens came to be called, formed an international network, sharing experiences and coordinating efforts. Lily, as the first, became their de facto leader. Though she insisted she was just the girl who happened to check the barn at the right time. The effects of the dragon's presence became measurable within months. Areas with concentrated dragon activity showed dramatic improvements in air and water quality. Dead zones in oceans began to recover as juvenile dragons, adapted for marine environments, neutralized pollutants, and restored coral reefs. Forests regained vitality as flying dragons seeded clouds to end devastating droughts. Not everyone welcomed the alien presence. Of course, resistance movements formed, ranging from paranoid conspiracy theorists to legitimate concerns about unintended consequences of introducing alien biology to Earth's ecosystems. The Lumiar met these challenges with transparency, subjecting their dragons to rigorous scientific scrutiny and adapting their methods when valid concerns arose. Through it all, the Mackenzie farm remained a center of this new relationship, part diplomatic mission, part research facility, part training ground for new dragon guardians. Robert and Elizabeth adapted to their unexpected role with pragmatic grace, maintaining as much normalcy as possible for Lily despite her global prominence. 2 years after first contact, as Lily approached her 13th birthday, the dragons reached young adulthood, Cosmos, now large enough that Lily could ride on his back, which she did, to her parents' constant anxiety, had developed the full capabilities the Lumiar had promised. On a crisp autumn morning, Lily and Cosmos stood at the edge of the farm property, looking out over fields that now burst with life, not just traditional crops, but experimental permacultures that incorporated both earth plants and carefully adapted vegetation from the Lumiar homeworld. "Ready?" she asked, securing the specially designed harness that allowed her to ride safely. Cosmos trilled agreement, lowering his shoulder to allow her to mount. With a powerful thrust of his wings, they were airborne, soaring above the transformed landscape of the farm. From this height, Lily could see the changes that had spread outward from their first contact point, concentric circles of rejuvenation extending mile by mile. The neighboring farms had all adopted dragon-assisted agriculture, their yields increasing while chemical inputs decreased to nearly zero. Further out, she could see the glint of new solar arrays, another Lumiar technology freely shared, and the outline of the research campus where scientists from around the world studied the ongoing integration of the two species. As they circled higher, Lily spotted other dragons in the distance, some with riders, others flying solo on assigned environmental missions. What had begun with 4 abandoned babies in a barn had grown into a global network of over 10,000 dragons, with more eggs arriving on each Lumiar transport. Thalassa had explained the long-term plan. Once Earth had stabilized and the dragon population had established itself, efforts would begin to heal the Lumiar homeworld using the knowledge gained from Earth's recovery. It would take generations, but both species now had hope where once there had been only desperation. Lily leaned forward, wrapping her arms around Cosmos's muscular neck as they banked through a cloud. "We did it," she whispered against his scales. "We really did it." Cosmos trilled in agreement, projecting into her mind images of their first meeting, her small self, standing awestruck in the barn doorway, his infant form, waiting patiently for the right human to discover them. The image shifted to a vision of the future, adult dragons and humans working side by side on a distant world, with crystal forests beginning to gleam again beneath an alien sun. Not an ending, but a beginning, for both their worlds. As they descended toward the farm, where her parents waited with their customary mixture of pride and worry, Lily reflected on the cosmic coincidence that had changed everything: her love of alien books, her early rising habits, her special way with animals. But perhaps it hadn't been coincidence at all. Perhaps, as Mrs. Harrow had suggested, the universe had a way of finding the right connections across the vastness of space, a child who believed in dragons, and dragons who needed someone to believe in them. Cosmos landed with graceful precision in the farmyard, lowering his wing to let Lily slide to the ground. As her feet touched Earth, a planet now healing because of this impossible partnership, she felt the weight and wonder of how much had changed, and how much was yet to come. The adventure she had yearned for had found her, and it was greater than anything she could have imagined. Not just the stars and strange worlds she had read about in secret, but something far more precious: a purpose that spanned galaxies, a friendship that defied biology, and a future filled with unlimited possibility. For a farm girl and her dragons, the universe had opened its doors, and they had only just begun to step through.